Welcome to Frazier and Dieter's Culture of Compliance podcast series, where we discuss compliance as a competitive advantage in today's marketplace. I'm Sabrina Serafin, partner and national leader of Frazier and Dieter's Process Risk and Governance Advisory Practice. And today is a very special episode of the podcast because we're talking to Bill Mulcahy, a name well known within not just the Atlanta internal audit community where he lives and works, but internationally. The Institute of Internal Auditors Atlanta chapter actually awards their highest honor, which is called the William J. Mulcahy Excellence Through Leadership Award. And that is because Bill served in a variety of roles within the Institute of Internal Auditors for more than a decade, and was the founding chair of the Kennesaw State Internal Audit Center, which has grown to one of the top-ranked internal audit centers in the world. We're delighted to have Bill on the podcast to share his reflections on the state of internal audit today. Bill, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me on this podcast. And Sabrina, right back to you. I'm really pleased that you are one of the recipients of the William J. Mulcahy Excellence Through Leadership Award.
Yes, I am. Thank you. And it's proudly on my desk as we speak. I was excited to have you on the podcast in a virtual fireside chat to talk to you about your thoughts on leadership in our profession. Internal audit professionals are finding themselves in a very strange phase right now, and it's never been more important to be a strong leader. Can you start us off by sharing one piece of advice that you have for professionals who are leading teams in today's challenging environment?
My one piece of advice is staying up to speed and keep learning. And my points are, when I was with the then great firm of Arthur Andersen and Company, staying up to speed and keep learning was easy, as training courses, both attending and teaching, were built into the culture, and getting more than 40 hours a year of CPE was required. However, when I went to work for Emory University, ironically, an institution of higher education itself, I had a staff of about 8, and there were a total of 22,000 employees, but there's only 8 of us that were interested in internal audit training. It's harder to find the appropriate training when there's only 8 of you. And this is what got me into administration of an audit organization, first the Association of Healthcare Internal Auditors, and later the IIA. Over the decades, what I did was get another certification or degree each decade to keep myself up to speed and to keep learning. In the first decade, I got my CPA and served on the Georgia Society of CPAs Healthcare Committee. Second decade, I got something called a Fellowship in Healthcare Financial Management and served on their Cost Reimbursement Committee. The third decade, I got a master's degree from Mercer University, and I've since published an article that says it's never too late to graduate. In that article, I quote Mark Twain, who says, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started. The secret of getting started is breaking your complex, overwhelming tasks into small, manageable tasks, and then starting on the first one." But that's how, mid-career, I got a master's degree, taking that first step and then taking 4 years of little steps to get it. In my fourth decade, I got the CIA, Certified Internal Auditor. And I find it so interesting that I got that, and then I find myself proposing to be the internal auditor for the city of Dunwoody. And I looked over the 10 other responses to their request for proposal, and it turned out I was the only person on the list that was both a CPA, and I've kept up all my CPE for that over the years, but I was also a CIA. And the position they were looking for was the internal auditor. So there was no one else among the firms proposing that had a certified internal auditor. That really impressed the mayor. And while he had never heard of a certified internal auditor prior to me pointing it out, it was the deciding factor that put me over the hurdle of getting that position. So in summary, I say, keep up the speed and keep learning.
Great advice. And I love that you have demonstrated over your career, which is spanning decades, that has always been a main focus for you. I think that's great. You understand that our podcast is called The Culture of Compliance. And the purpose of our podcast is really to not only encourage organizations to rethink what compliance means, what compliance is actually for, and who it's for, and not look at it as a burden. Can you give us some advice for management teams who see that opportunity and would like to build a culture of compliance, understanding that there's often an uphill battle?
Sure. Whether you're talking compliance or auditing, I want to talk to ethics. And I've written an article published by the Atlanta Business Chronicle that talks about the foundation of internal auditing is its code of ethics, which has 4 components to it: integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and competency. First, on integrity. Oprah Winfrey quote is, "Real integrity is doing the right thing, knowing that nobody's going to know whether you did it or not." Then also, Tony Dungy says, integrity is keeping your word. Integrity is the internal compass and rudder that directs you to where you know you should go when everything around you is pulling you in a different direction. Some people think reputation is the same thing as integrity, but they're 2 different things. Your reputation is the public perception of your integrity because it's other people's opinion of you. You may or may not be accurate. Others determine your reputation, but only you can determine your integrity. Second, objectivity. Internal auditors or compliance officers or anyone exhibit the highest level of professional objectivity. Cynthia Cooper, Time Person of the Year and one of the best internal auditors in the world, when encouraged by her chief financial officer at WorldCom to delay an internal audit of capital expenditures, she went forward anyway. At the end of her audit, the CFO went to prison and she became Time Person of the Year and a best-selling author. But no, for whistleblowers, it does not always turn out as well for the whistleblower as it did for Cynthia Cooper. Confidentiality. Internal auditors respect the value of ownership of information they receive and do not disclose the information without appropriate authority unless there is a legal or professional obligation to do so. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it, according to Warren Buffett, an American business magnate, investor, and philanthropist. Here's an example. Who at Volkswagen had that confidential information that there was a software device built into engines that activate during an admissions test to trick the test to show passing grade when there should have been a failing grade? Note, I did not see in my readings at the time any mention that Volkswagen internal auditor was aware of this confidential information about the software device. And was that because those in the know at Volkswagen wanted to keep their alleged unethical behavior from the auditor, investigator, and the public view? Were they steering the compliance and auditors away from this? Litigation may answer that question in the future. And fourth, competency. Internal auditors apply the knowledge and skill and experience needed in the performance of internal audit services. How many times after a business lapse of ethical judgment have we heard the phrase, "Where were the auditors?" Another way of saying that is the title of the book by Harry Markopolos, "No One Would Listen," to his years-long charge about the Bernie Madoff financial scandal.
The foundation of internal auditing is a code of ethics. And what it sounds like you've provided, Bill, is with integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, and competency, the tenets for what management should be looking for internally. And internal auditors support those objectives and support that code. I'd like to move to the fact that you have long been a leader and a supporter of mentorship within the internal audit community. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes asking you to share your advice that you give to those young professionals who are just entering into the field. And what would you like to be able to say to them if you had an opportunity to chat with them one-on-one?
Another article I had published in the Atlanta Business Chronicle is called "Choosing to be an Exceptional Leader: Certifications, Standards, and Peer Reviews." And on certifications, I wanted to tell the story of interacting with the late, great IIA Global President, Bill Bishop, who spoke for me when I was chair of the board of the Association of Healthcare Internal Auditors. Bill pulled me aside and privately decided to share some important teaching information with me by asking, "Are you a CPA?" "Yes, I am." "When you worked for a CPA firm, were you passionate about getting your CPA?" "Well, yes, I was, and you needed it to get promoted." Bill then asked, why, as the then chief audit executive of Emory University, had I not taken the time to become a CIA? Whoa, that's a message. 5 years later, after Bill Bishop had died, I became president of the IIA Atlanta and took and passed the CIA exam. I am hoping by telling that story that others do not wait for a personal invitation from the president of the IIA Global to get their certified internal auditor designation. I'm hoping I can influence people to get it, and to others in compliance, IT, or other specialties to go ahead and get the appropriate certification for the field that you're in. Demonstrating you know and follow standards by getting your appropriate certification really goes a long way. Other than impressing myself that so many years out of school, I could still take an exam and pass it. The people I really impressed was my own staff, who we had one person who was struggling at the time with getting the CIA, and felt pretty good to take the exam and pass it when those closer to the being in school were still struggling with it. And then the other thing I wanted to mention in this section is the mentoring program. The IIA Atlanta has a way for people to give back to the younger people coming along, and we have a mentoring program. The next event is November the 6th, and we have 2 hours of presentation about inspirational stories, with the theme of it being, you can't go back and change your beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. That's per C.S. Lewis.
Bill, as we start to wrap up, Do you have any closing thoughts about the challenges and also the opportunities that the profession faces in this year of great and rapid changes as we are about to enter the fourth quarter of 2020?
My advice, first piece of advice, is to network. Be that community service, volunteer at a not-for-profit, and that be the IIA, the Chamber of Commerce, the school you went to, your kid's grade school. What you choose to be involved in is up to you, but get involved in some not-for-profit. Long before I got involved in the IIA, I served on the board of an organization called Community Friendship, Inc. I served there for 17 years, and the focus of the organization was helping people that were homeless and had a diagnosis of mental illness. I think contributing back to the community, what any of us can do is good for the community and good for ourselves. Next, I'd say read. And I mean read non-accounting and auditing books. I'm sure people have read enough textbooks related to their field of expertise. I've put together my list of 14 favorite books, which I'll provide, but two of them I wanted to go over here today. One is How to Be Like Walt, and Walt being Walt Disney. And the advice out of that book is write down your vision so you know where you plan to go. As they say, if you don't have a plan for where you're going to go, you don't know if you ever get there. And my other favorite is Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done. It's about Jack Welch, the legendary leader of GE. And the theme in that book is you have to do much more than vision. The next step is to implement that. So, as we mentioned, the board of the IIA Atlanta in 2007 named the Excellence Through Leadership Award for me. And it's a combination of those two books that got me this. And one was having a vision for the IIA Atlanta, and then, as we call it, boldly going where no chapter has gone before, and executing on those 5 vision statements, which were the chapter would be a gold, now platinum every year, which is the highest distinction a chapter can get in a given year. Well, we accomplished that. I would take and pass the CIA exam as an advocacy example to others. Well, I did that. Atlanta would host the biggest and best IIA regional conference ever. And we did that in September 2007. Atlanta would host the IIA Global International Conference. Well, I was chairman of that and of the 69th Annual International Conference held here in Atlanta in June of 2010. And the 5th item on my vision list was Atlanta would have an Internal Audit Education Partnership Certificate Granting University. And as we talk here today, Atlanta has 2 such universities, Georgia State University and Kennesaw State University. And at Kennesaw, I served as the founding board chair of that program. And we have taken it from no internal audit program to one of the 8 top-rated internal audit programs in the world. So know that in reading those books, first one by Pat Williams, To Be Like Walt, that's where you write down what your vision is. But then the second part of that is the book, Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done. And in that, you don't just have a vision for what needs to be done, you need to build the teams that can get it done. Of note, when I was fortunate enough to have this award named after me, I insisted in the first year that the 10 people who were peers of mine and with me on those 5 vision statements, I insisted they all get the award that same year. And that's what we did. I would say, in the words of Jack Welch, when you were made the leader, you weren't given a crown, you were given the responsibility to bring out the best in others. And I hope that's what I did related to that award. So the sage advice I have is network and read, making sure it's not all direct accounting and auditing books.
Excellent, Bill. Thank you so much. And we will put your list of favorite books in the podcast episode notes to share with our audience. Bill, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It's an honor to have you here. It's an honor to work with you. And want to thank you from the internal audit community for what you have done to raise the profile of the industry and our importance to each one of our organizations. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And to our audience, thank you for listening to Fraser and Dieter's Culture of Compliance podcast. And please join us for our next episode as we continue to discuss transforming compliance requirements into investments in your business.
Thanks for listening to one of Fraser and Dieter's branded podcasts. To learn more, connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us at fraserdieter.com and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.